remote access through the Palo Alto Firewall using GlobalProtect. If you need help configuring it, you're in the right place. At the end of this video, you're going to be able to configure the Palo Alto Firewall to allow your coworkers or clients to access your network securely from outside the physical corporate boundaries using the GlobalProtect app. Palo Alto uses the GlobalProtect app to allow users to connect remotely and securely to their corporate networks. You can authenticate a user in different ways. In this video, I'm going to show you how to authenticate a user, first using just username and password, then using username password plus a client certificate, and at last, using username and password plus the Google Authenticator. In order for that to work, we need to configure three main VPN components. The first component is the portal. The GlobalProtect configuration is provided through the portal, including information about available gateways and client certificates to connect to them. Endpoints can download the GlobalProtect client through the portal. The second component is the gateway. The gateway provides security enforcement for the traffic coming from the endpoints. The connection to the corporate network is made through the gateway. And then you have the app. The app runs on users' endpoints like desktops, laptops, tablets or smartphones and allow the connection to the portals and gateways in order to establish the VPN connection to the corporate network. When a user connects to a portal, for example, using a web browser, the portal first needs to authenticate the user. If the authentication is successful, the user is offered the option to download the app. The portal also provides other configuration information, such as available gateways, certificates, and several app behavior settings. The portal is configured on the Palo Alto Firewall and is attached to an interface that can be reached from the internet. After connecting to a portal and receiving the information about the gateways, the app tries to connect to one of them. After authenticating the user, the gateway allows the connection to the corporate network. You can have portal and gateway running on the same firewall, or multiple distributed gateways on different firewalls all across the world. The apps run on end devices and enable remote access by communicating with the portal and gateways. The user can download apps for Windows or for Macs directly from the portal, or for mobile devices from the official stores such as Google Play or Apple Store. In order to use the mobile versions, you need to have a license though. Let's take a look at the functions that are offered without a paid license and the ones that you need to spend some money to get. So some of the free features are, you can have multiple gateways and some other basic features. For more advanced features, you need to pay. For example, mobile apps, Linux endpoints, IPv6 if you want to use it with external gateways, and so on. I'll leave you a link to the Palo Alto documentation in the description below. There you can see all the functions available with and without the license. Now I'm going to cover how the user authentication on the portal and gateways work. The concept is the same for both portal and gateways. But if you want, you can configure authentication profiles independently on each of them. In our example, we use radios for both of them. I'm not going to cover how the authentication server like the radio server is configured. The goal of this video is to focus on the configuration of the Palo Alto Firewall. So in the first user authentication method, the portal and the gateway will authenticate the user, only verifying username and password against a radio server. If the portal or the gateway receive an accept back from the radio server, the user is authenticated. In the second user authentication method, besides authentication the username and password, the portal or gateway check for a valid client certificate. In the third user authentication method, the client gets asked for a one-time password after successfully authenticating the username and password. After receiving the OTP from the Google Authenticator, the user can enter the password received and get authenticated from the radio server. For our configuration, I have a Palo Alto Firewall connected to a Linux server through a zone called Trust. This Linux server has a web server running on it. Throughout the tutorial, we will be testing the HTTP connectivity to this server. The untrusted interface from the firewall can be reached from the internet with the help of a NAT router. A client accessing vpn.netsums.com lands on this NAT router. This router forwards everything to the untrusted interface of the Palo Alto Firewall, which will be processing the connections from the VPN clients. When the VPN clients connect, they are assigned an IP address from the network 10030 and are connected to the firewall zone called VPN users. So let's head to the computer and start configuring them. So let's start planning the firewall interface we're going to be using for the portal. The firewall interface type has to be either loopback or layer 3. In this example, I configured a layer 3 interface for the interface Ethernet 1.1, which is in the zone untrust.
So now I need to create a tunnel interface that the VPN user are going to use later on in order to connect to the corporate network.
Under tunnel, I'm going to create my new tunnel interface. Interface name you cannot change, but you can give a number. You can choose whichever number you want. In my case, I'm going to choose number 1. As a comment, I'm going to enter tunnel for VPN users. I choose the virtual router as a default. And in the security zone, I need to create a new one. I'm just going to name it VPN users. An important thing, have to enable the user identification. Just press OK. Under IPv4, I need to enter the IP address that the firewall is going to be using and the network from the VPN users, which is the network is 10.030. So I need to give the firewall an IP address in this network. In my case, I just chose the 10.034. There you go. So you have the new tunnel interface .1 that's going to be used by the VPN users. So now you need to create the certificates to use by the GlobalProtect components. So for that, you just need to go to Device, Certificate, and click on the bottom at Generate. As a certificate name, you can just give GP from GlobalProtect _rootCA. This is what I'm entering now for this example. Common name, you can enter whatever you want. Check the certificate authority. And then you can just press OK. This is my rootCA for this example. Has been generated from the Palo Alto Firewall, self-signed certificate. So after you created the rootCA certificate, just go down, press generate. Now you're going to generate the certificates that you're going to be using by the portal and the gateway. In the name, I just called it gp_vpn.netsums.com. As a common name, I entered the FQDN of my portal and my gateways. This is a very important part. I have a DNS, I have a FQDN for my gateway. In this case, it's vpn.netsums.com. Don't forget, then later, sign by, you need to select the rootCA that you just generated. Under certificate attribute, if you enter the FQDN above on the common name, you have to select host, and then you have to enter the same common name as you entered above. Otherwise, there are some browsers nowadays that are going to make some trouble. If you enter an IP address in the common name, then on the certificate attribute type, you need to change IP address, and then you re-enter the IP address as a value. After that, you can just generate. In my case, I have a problem in the certificate name. I cannot enter any dots. I'm going to substitute the dots with the underscore. And then just press generate, and then it's going to be fine. After the certificates are done, you have to go to SSL TLS service profile, and then you have to configure a new service profile that's going to be used by the portal and the gateways. So I just name it GP_certificate profile. And then I have to choose the certificate that I created. Now I need to create a certificate that's going to be used from the clients when they connect to the portal and the gateways. In the case when they are requested to show a certificate. So certificate name, I'm just going to be calling GP_client certificate sort. Common name, I just can enter whatever I want. Sign by, this is important, by the rootCA from the Palo Alto Firewall, and just click on generate. That's enough. So let's configure now our Radius authentication. So for that, under Device and Server Profiles, just find Radius and click on Add. Just add a profile name, in my case GP_Radius Server Profile. Choose the authentication protocol, in my case it's going to be PAP. And under servers, I'm going to add the server. Just give a name, GP_Radius Server, give the IP address. This is my Linux server, my secret key, and the port 1812. This is the correct port. I will just leave it like this. In my case, I'm running FreeRadius on my Linux server, and there you go. That's my server profile.
At this point here, guys, I would like to make a disclaimer. As you're going to notice later, my Radius server is in the untrust zone. I just used a Linux server that was already configured in this zone. I think for this tutorial, it will be enough. If I was in production, for sure, I would not do it like this. Just be careful in your environment. But for this tutorial, I think it will be enough.
Now I have to go to Authentication Profile. Click on Add. I'm going to create a profile called GP_Radius Authentication. Choose the type of authentication, is going to be Radius. My server profile, the one that I just created now. And the rest I'm just going to leave like this. In the advanced, in the allow list, I'm going to just choose all. And that's it. In my case, I need to change the interface that my Palo Alto Firewall is sending the Radius requests. As a default is the management interface, but in my case, I'm going to change to Ethernet 1.1, which is my untrusted interface, so it's in the same network as the radio server. I don't know if you need to change on your environment, but in my example here, I had to change it. Now I'm going to prepare all the objects that I need to create the firewall, the security rules. So the first one that I need will be the radio server. This is the 10.0.1.5 in my case. The next one, I have the Linux client. It has the IP address 10.0.2.5. Next one is the firewall trust IP address. It's the firewall interface in the trust network, and also the firewall untrust. These are the IP addresses from the firewalls in each of these zones. The next one is the network that's going to be used by the VPN clients when they connect. This is the 10.0.3.0. Next one is going to be the network, the trusted network, which in my case is 10.0.2.0. It's the, let's say, the inside network. Here I forgot the mask. And the last one that I need is the untrusted network, which is the 10.0.1.0. Now I need to configure some security rules in order to allow the GlobalProtect app to access the portal and the gateways, and also our Linux server. So we need to go to Policies, Security, and then click on Add. I'm going to add the first rule. I'm going to call it HTTPS to portal. This rule is going to allow the HTTPS connection to the portal. So in the source, I'm going to enter untrust. That's where the users are in the internet. As a destination, also untrust, because that's where my portal is. And I'm going to choose the firewall untrust. This is the firewall interface in the untrust zone. The application will be SSL, which is HTTPS. And I'm going to allow also web browsing, which is normal HTTP. The second rule I'm going to add is the rule to allow the firewall to reach the radio server. So description, allow access from Palo Alto Firewall to radio server. Source, of course, is going to be our untrust interface. Firewall untrust. This is the same interface as the portal. I used untrust as a source because my radio server is in the untrust zone. And I also configured the radios before under services to use the untrusted interface as a radio source. If I had chosen another interface, I would have to allow this other interface here. As an application, I choose radius. There, if you go to setup, services, service route configuration, you're going to see that on radius, I configured Ethernet 1.1, which is my interface in the untrust zone. That's why I'm using this one now. If I go to interfaces, Ethernet 1.1, you're going to see that the security zone configured for this interface is the untrusted one. Okay, this is the second rule. So I have the HTTPS to the portal. I have the connection from the firewall to the radio server. Now I'm going to add another one. It's the one allowing the VPN client to access the Linux server after they are connected to the portal, to the gateway, to source zones. It's the VPN users. This is a new zone that I created for the tunnel interface. That's where the client are coming from. And as a destination, I'm going to choose trust. That's where my Linux server is. And the destination address is going to be the Linux client. So as an application, I'm going to allow SSL, SSH, and web browsing. Now I'm going to enter the default rule. It's called deny any. Yeah, the Palo Alto has already a default rule, but the problem is that this default rule doesn't log by itself. So as a best practice, I like to configure a deny any rule, so I have more options when I configure such a rule. In this case, you can choose drop, you can choose deny. In my case, I'm going to choose deny. There's one more thing that I forgot. Under the rule HTTPS to GP portal, I'm going to use this rule also to allow the application Palo Alto GlobalProtect. This allows the connection from the clients to the gateway. So the Palo Alto GlobalProtect is the application used from the GlobalProtect application when they are communicating with the gateway. So I have to allow this one too. So guys, if you enjoyed the video so far, don't forget to give me a thumbs up or to subscribe to the channel. So let's get back to the tutorial. Now let's go to the GlobalProtect. Under network, you have the section GlobalProtect and gateways. Now we're going to start configuring the gateway. As a name, I'm going to give GP_gateway. The interface that the gateway is going to be using is the Ethernet 1.1, which is my untrusted one. Under IPv4 address, I'm going to choose the IPv4 in the network, untrusted network, which is my interface in this network. Under authentication, I choose the SSL authentication that I have configured before. Client authentication, I have the name GP_gateway client auth, just the name that I gave. In authentication profile, I choose the radius authentication that I created. And most importantly, on the bottom, user credentials, I choose yes, because in this case, I don't want any certificates to be checked, only the username and password. Under the agent, tunnel settings, I have to choose my tunnel interface, which will be tunnel 1. If you want, you can choose the maximum number of users. In my case, I just enter something, 50 for example, but you can see if you don't want to choose it, you don't need to. Under client settings, I'm going to be adding the new configuration. I'm going to name it GP_agent config. Authentication override. I'm going to choose to create cookies for authentication override. This means that whenever the client is connected to the gateway sets a cookie on the client that the client doesn't have to authenticate itself every time for the next, in my case, I configured 8 hours. It's more user-friendly because the user doesn't have to enter the passwords so often, and the cookie is encrypted. So for the cookie encryption, I'm gonna choose the certificate that we created for the client certificate, so that it gets encrypted. So in my case, I'm gonna choose the certificate, GP client certificate, that's gonna be used to encrypt the cookie. Under IP pools, I'm gonna enter an IP pool, which is the DHCP pool. So when a client gets connected, in my case, the client's gonna get an IP address from the range 10.03.100 to 200. Under split tunnel, you need to configure which networks are allowed in the tunnel. So the split tunneling configuration is important so that the firewall or the GlobalProtect app knows which networks or which targets the GlobalProtect is supposed to send through the tunnel. It doesn't send everything automatically. You have to tell the app which networks the remote client is supposed to access on your network. So only these networks that you enter there are going to be accessed. In my case, I just need the trusted network so I can show you that the client can access the Linux server. So I'm just going to enter 10.0.20 as my split tunnel network. After that, just press OK, and then OK again. And that's the gateway configuration. So now let's go to the portal. I'm going to create a new portal, click on Add, and I'm going to enter GP_portal. I'm going to choose the same interface and the same IP address as the gateway. Since we're doing everything under the same interface, all the rest you can leave as it is. I'm going to choose the SSL TLS server certificate profile that I created. And on the client authentication, I'm going to add a new client configuration called GP Portal Client Authentication. The authentication profile is the radius one that I chose. And also in the bottom, I'm going to choose yes, so that no client certificate is required. Press OK. And now under agent, I need to add a new agent. I'm going to call this GP_portal agent auth. I don't need the client certificate, but I'm going to set the cookies. Again, 8 hours for the portal also as for the gateway. And I'm going to choose the client certificate. Under external, I need to set my external gateways. I'm just going to call this GP external GW. I'm going to choose my FQDN. In your case, if you have FQDN or IP, just enter. In my case is vpnnetsums.com. And I'm going to set any for the source regions, because I only have one gateway anyway. So that's my external gateway, which is the same one as the portal. Just press OK in this case. That's the portal configuration. After that, you can commit your configuration. So under device, GlobalProtect client, you need to download the client software. So in this case, you need to click on check now on the left side. And then click on download. I'm going to download the newest one at the time that I'm making this video. Just click on download, and the firewall is going to download the software. So the software resides now on the firewall. And when a GlobalProtect client connects to the portal, it gets offered to download the software, which gets downloaded directly from the firewall. So now after the software gets downloaded, you can activate it. After it gets activated, you can see that it shows that it's currently installed. Here I'm showing you a Windows client that's in the internet, and it's going to try to connect to the portal. This client doesn't have any certificate from the Palo Alto. I'm going to show you what happens when you try to connect to the portal without the certificate. So in my case, I'm gonna type in my browser https vpn.netsums.com. This is the FQDN for my portal and my gateway. You see that I get a connection is not private error. Certificate authority is invalid. It's not secure. Let me take a look at the certificate now. It does show a certificate signed from the GP root CA, which is the correct one from the Palo Alto, but my Windows client doesn't recognize this root CA as a trusted CA. So it doesn't trust the certificate. So now we're going to export the certificate in order to be able to import to the Windows client. So I'm going to choose the root certificate. That's the one that we need. Choose export certificate. I'm going to leave the base 64 format. I don't need to export any private key. So just press OK and you're going to see that the file has been downloaded. Now I have to transport this file to my Windows computer. If you have a PKI on your company, you don't need to take these steps, but you need to have the same root certificates on the Palo Alto machine and on the Palo Alto Firewall and also on your Windows clients, of course, so that they can trust each other. Or you get a third-party certificate which will be trusted from your Windows machines. And after it's installed on my Windows machine, I can open my browser again, type in the FQDN that I typed before, which is the vpn.netsums.com. Now you can see the portal without the warning from the certificate. Certificate is valid, and you can see that the information from the certificate is the same, but now the Windows client trusts the GP root CA because it has been installed as a trusted certificate. As you can see, the CN is the vpn.netsums.com. This is the one that we configured before while configuring the portal, and it works. I'm gonna log into the Palo Alto portal. I'm gonna use this GP user. This is a user that's already configured on my radio server. And after I log in and my login is successful, I get this page where I can download these three types of GlobalProtect agents or apps for Windows 32 bits, Windows 64 bit, and also for Mac. So I downloaded the 64 bit and I'm installing it now. You can change the folder if you want. I'm just gonna leave on the default one and then next, and my GlobalProtect app gets installed. So now in the taskbar of your Windows, you can see the symbol of the Earth. And if you go back to the Palo Alto, you're gonna see the connections from my PC in the internet, which has the source IP address 382.190.203 to the portal. And you can also see the connections from the firewall to the radio server, which are the 4 ones on top using application radius. And it's getting allowed. If you go to your GlobalProtect log under monitor, you're gonna see that the GP user was authenticated on the portal. You can see the event is called Portal Auth. In the status, it has a successful state, so the connection was successful. Now if you go back to the client and click on the little earth on the taskbar, it shows a welcome page. Just click on Get Started. Now you're supposed to enter the portal domain address, which in our case is vpn.netsums.com. After that, just click on Connect. Now you need to enter the login credentials for the gateway. In our case, they are the same as for the portal. If it shows you a not connected page, just wait a little bit. It should be connecting in the background. There you go, we are connected. You can ignore this little warning. It's just telling you that it changed the connection type from IPsec to SSL, because I don't allow the IPsec ports on my firewall. Now let's see if the connection to the Linux client can be established. If I enter the IP address 10.0.2.5, I can establish the connection to the Apache server running on the Linux client. On the firewall, you can see that the connections are allowed. So now we're gonna go one step further and tell the gateway and portal that they both need a client certificate to connect. So now I am on the certificate profile. I'm creating a certificate profile. I'm calling it GP client certificate profile. and I'm going to select as a CA certificate the GP root CA, and the firewall is going to use this root CA certificate to validate the client certificate. So the client needs a certificate, and on the firewall side, on the server side, it has to be validated by the root CA created from the Palo Alto. I'm also gonna mark the block sessions with expired certificates, so expired certificates are not gonna be allowed to connect. So now going to the portal, under Network, GlobalProtect Portals, you need to set the certificate profile to the profile that we created under Authentication. And we need to say that the user needs to connect using their username and password and also the certificate. So at the gateway, under GlobalProtect, we do the same. We set the certificate profile to the one we created. And we say that we need a client certificate plus username and password. After that, you can commit the configuration. So let's test a connection now from our VPN client without installing the certificate. So let's see, it's trying to connect to the gateway. Now we get an error. A valid client certificate is required for authentication. If the issue persists, contact your administrator. Let's see what the portal says when we try to connect. So we enter https vpn@sams.com. Now we already see valid client certificate is required. We can try to enter our username and password. And we click on login. We see that the valid client certificate is required. Even with the correct username and password, doesn't allow us to authenticate. You can choose in your environment if you only want it for the gateway or if you want it for the portal also. I mean, if you require it for the portal, it means that only a client with the certificate will be allowed to download the GlobalProtect app. If you only want for the gateway, so clients will be allowed to download, but they won't be allowed to connect to the gateway. So if you go to Device, Certificate Management and Certificate, now there's an option for us to export the certificate. Now we're going to export the client certificate, but pay attention now, we need the private key. Otherwise, we won't be able to connect. So in order to export it, we're going to choose the option Pay Key CS12, and we're going to say that we want to export the private key. And for that, you need to enter a passphrase that you're going to have to enter when you try to install the certificates. It's just a security measure, but you just need to memorize it when you install on your client, that you just have this passphrase on either in your memory or you wrote it somewhere down. So after pressing OK, the certificate gets downloaded and you can transfer it to your client. So now I'm on my Windows client. I already have the certificate here, so I'm just gonna double click it and I'm gonna install it as a current user. It comes to a point that it asks for a password, so I have to enter the password that I entered when I was exporting it. And I will let Windows choose the location of the certificate. So the certificate has been installed, so let's go take a look. If we run MMC, you're going to see the location of the certificate. You have to add a snap in certificates. I'm going to choose my user account because I said before that I want it under my user. There's the certificate. You see a little key on the symbol, so it means that the private key is already there. Well, it's already connected, so I'm going to disconnect and I'm going to connect again so you can see. Connect to the gateway, of course. Finding the best available gateway. And then comes this message again that IPsec is not being supported, but it's connected. I'm going to type in the IP address of the Linux server. And I can see that I can reach it. So I'm connected. If I take a look at the monitor on the firewall, on the GlobalProtect, you're going to see the GP user is connected. Now you can see if the connection to the portal also works. So https vpn netsums.com. It's gonna, now the portal asks for a certificate. Since the browser found one certificate, it's asking us, okay, should I use this one to authenticate myself? When the server says, I need a certificate, the browser shows you a window saying that it needs a certificate and you can choose which one you want. In this case, we only have one certificate, so this is the one that we chose. And then you can see the connection to the portal works. Now let's try our third method. It's the one that we need an external authenticator like Google Authenticator. And the radio server, when the username and passwords are correctly authenticated, sends a challenge back to the firewall, so that the firewall shows a window where you can enter the verification code. The text that you can see there, please enter Google Authentication code with a little typo on the please. I can configure it on my radio server. So I configure this phrase. I forgot an E on the please, but it sends back to the Palo Alto, and the Palo Alto can also show the users this kind of window. This is a radio's configuration. Then you enter the verification code that you get through your smartphone, and then either get verified or not. So you send this code, hits the Palo Alto sends it further to the radio server validates it, and then the user gets connected. That's how it works. So guys, you made it to the end. Perfect. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, just give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. This is gonna help the YouTube algorithm to reach more people. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Bye.